It was the summer I turned 12 and my younger sister was 10. My stepdad had taken us out to a remote campground in northern Iowa for a weekend getaway. It was supposed to be relaxing, just a few days away from the city, surrounded by the smell of pine, the crackle of campfires, and the chirping of crickets. The campground was small, tucked into the woods so deep that by the time we parked, the sun had already dipped behind the towering trees. There were only a few other campers scattered far apart, so the night was quiet, unnervingly quiet. After dinner, just as the sky turned from orange to deep indigo, my sister tugged at my arm. "Will you come with me to the outhouse?" she whispered. The outhouse was perched up a steep staircase made of old logs, away from the main campsite. The climb looked eerie under the dim light of dusk, but I nodded. She hated going alone, and honestly, I wasn't thrilled either. We grabbed a small flashlight and started up the steps. The forest on either side felt alive, like the shadows themselves were breathing. The smell of damp earth and moss filled my lungs, and every step creaked under our weight. We reached the outhouse. I waited outside while my sister went in, tapping my foot impatiently. The woods were silent. No wind, no bugs, just stillness. That's when I felt it, someone watching. I turned slowly, scanning the trees. That's when I saw him. About 6 steps above us, a figure stood. At first, I thought it was another camper. But the longer I stared, the more wrong it looked. It was tall. Unnaturally tall. And it wasn't just standing, it was looming. The figure had no features, no color, no light reflecting off it. It was pure darkness, as if someone had cut a hole in reality shaped like a man. The only detail I could make out was something strapped to its chest, maybe a flashlight or some metallic object, but it didn't glow. My heart stopped. I whispered, "Sarah, we need to go, now." She looked up, froze, and her small hand gripped mine so tightly it hurt. We turned and hurried down the stairs. The figure didn't move at first, but the moment we reached the halfway point, the footsteps started, heavy, deliberate, thud, thud, thud. The sound echoed through the woods. "Don't look back," I told her. My voice cracked, but she did. And the scream she let out sent chills through my spine. We ran down the stairs, through the path, not daring to stop. My sister lost a shoe on the way, but I yanked her along, clutching it in my hand. The footsteps behind us grew louder, faster, until they matched our pace. Just as we burst out of the tree line into the clearing where our tent sat, the sound stopped. I spun around, chest heaving. And there he was. The shadow figure stood at the edge of the woods, completely still, almost blending into the darkness of the trees. There was no face, no movement, just a tall, unnatural silhouette staring right at us. And then it vanished. Not like someone walking away, not like it slipped behind a tree. It was there 1 second and gone the next. We ran to the fire where my stepdad sat with my little brother. We were shaking so badly we could barely speak. When we finally managed to tell him, he frowned, glanced toward the tree line, and said it was probably just a trick of the light or maybe another camper messing around. But my sister and I knew what we saw. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in the tent with my sister curled up next to me, listening to every rustle, every crack of a twig outside. The fire died down, the woods turned black, and the air grew colder. Around 2 a.m., I thought I heard something outside. Soft footsteps circling the tent. I held my breath, clutching the flashlight tight. I didn't dare unzip the tent. The footsteps faded into the distance, but I stayed awake until the first rays of sunlight crept through the canvas. The next morning, I noticed something strange. Around our tent, there were footprints, large ones, bigger than any boot my stepdad owned. They circled our campsite and stopped directly in front of where my sister's head had rested while she slept. We left that afternoon, cutting the trip short. My stepdad didn't admit it, but I saw the worry in his eyes when he saw those prints. To this day, I don't know what that thing was. A ghost? A shadow person? Something else entirely? What I do know is that it wasn't human. And every time I go camping, every time the sun dips behind the trees and the forest goes silent, I remember that night. Because somewhere out there in the woods of northern Illinois, something watches, something waits. I still replay that night in my mind, the smell of damp pine and cold earth, the steady drip of rain onto the flimsy nylon above me. We'd set up camp a few hours earlier, 4 friends, deep in the Appalachian woods of western Pennsylvania, pitching tents beside a slow creek. The fire burned low, and when we crawled into our sleeping bags around midnight, the woods had softened to mist and silence. My tent was the only one left lit, the others dark and empty shells. I lay awake, listening to rain pattering on the fly sheet. Probably half asleep when I first heard it, the dull knock of a small rock against canvas. My heart leapt. I froze, eyes closed. A breeze whispered through the trees. I told myself it was a pinnacone. A branch. Nothing. Then something heavy hit the tent wall, just inches above my head. I sat bolt upright in the dark, pulse hammering. Adrenaline shot through me as I whispered, "Guys." Something just hit the tent. A stumble of breath from Matt, in the tent across the way. My friend Josh rustled. Everyone was awake now. No light. No movement. Just the sound of rain and one single rock continuing to bounce against nylon. I peeled back a sliver of fabric, no flashlight, no phone, nothing that might betray our spot. Outside, the rain blurred silhouettes of pine trunks. My breath caught when another rock struck louder, aimed. Then more like hailstones of cold stone, pounding the mesh in rhythm, rock after rock, from multiple directions. Some thud, thud, thud near the fire pit. Others smacked against the mesh seams. I glanced at Matt. He held my gaze in the dim glow. Yes, he'd heard it too. Nobody spoke. Nobody dared breathe. After 5 long minutes, the rocks stopped. Silence settled, thick and heavy. Then Fana woman screamed, deep, guttural, human but unnatural. It echoed through the trees, stretching, distorting. Then nothing but rain again, washing over our heads. Crickets resumed their call, but the scream lingered in my chest like ice. When dawn crawled over the tree line, we peeked outside. Everything looked untouched, mist curled above the creek. No footprints in the soft mud, no signs of wildlife. But close to the fire pit, I found one of the thrown stones, smooth river rock, around softball size, wedged into the dirt. At the base of a pine tree across the creek, there was something more disturbing, a large, U-shaped gash in the soft bark like someone had dug a curved blade against it. Not freshly scraped, but there nonetheless. Later that morning, I visited the subreddit again and found a post just like ours. Someone else had heard stones on their tent at similar hours near the same creek. Linked to Appalachian Trail communities. The resemblance was chilling. Night 2 came with tension. None of us slept well. By 2:05 a.m. the rain had stopped. I lay there, clutching my phone in the dark. The moon was heavy behind clouds. Then, thunk, another rock, right on the roof of the tent. I stayed still. Another, back wall. Then again. But those throws didn't stop. Over and over, sometimes from one side, sometimes both. We didn't speak. I trembled free of my clothes and crept to the edge of the fly where the mesh parted beneath the vestibule. I peeked out, nothing but shadows and stillness, no person, no headlamp glow, no shapes to hide behind. Then a primal scream, this time closer. Not distant anymore, but like someone or something right beyond the stumps that served as chairs. It wasn't female. Deep, roaring, terrible, a sound that seemed carved from pain and hunger. That scream jolted us into motion. Flashlights shattered the darkness, beams cutting across empty clearing. The fire pit behind us was still, no ember, no movement, but the silence throbbed. For one heartbeat, we all held still. Then 3 of us rushed out toward the poured-in gravel pathway. Nobody saw anything, nothing moved. The wind had stopped. Trees stood silent. We circled the tents, called out, but heard nothing but distant crowing of roosters and an owl overhead. At sunrise we inspected again. The creek looked calm. No footprints. But slash marks scratched across the creek bedrock like someone carved initials into stone, SAM, or 5 a.m. I don't know. It looked purposeful. And then, amid those rocks, I found the last terrifying thing, my fishing pole. The fiberglass rod snapped so cleanly it looked like someone cut it with shears. Not dropped, not stepped on. Snapped. We packed up by 9 a.m. None spoke more than a few words. On the drive home, the radio played classic rock and tried to mask my shaking. Even now, nearly a year later, I hear sounds on the screen door or the drip-drip of rain, and it plucks a chord in my chest again. I still have the rock. A smooth river stone, softball-sized. It sits in my glove box. I stare at it on rainy nights. It was the early dawn hours of a late spring morning June of 2018. I was 15, a high school freshman with restless energy. One night, me and two friends snuck out from my house around 1:30 a.m., determined to explore a bridge about 2 miles away where the river wound beneath a set of ancient trees. We arrived around 2:20 a.m. The area was swamp-like, the river sluggish and quiet, with trees leaning overhead almost like guardians. The only real sound was our footsteps crunching on gravel. One friend tossed rocks into the water, just play acting, but the splash echoed in the darkness. That's when we heard it. Faint snapping of twigs and rustling on the opposite side of the riverbank. My friend froze, whispered, "What is that?" I swallowed, tried to steady my flashlight. A deer, I thought. But as the beam swept across the opposite shore, I realized no deer could be that tall. Something moved between the trees and into the dim radius of my flashlight beam. That's when we saw it, a pale humanoid figure standing at the edge of the river. It was massive, at least 16 feet tall, eyes two black voids, no facial features except darkness. The body looked gaunt, two long arms, razor-sharp claws that scraped the water's surface. It stepped forward slowly, paused, then it slowly turned to face us. I'll never forget that moment. The absolute silence, the towering figure illuminated only by flashlight, no breath, no sound. Just that frozen stare, and the claws dipped into water. Then it emitted a screech unlike anything I've ever heard, deep, inhuman, reverberating through the night air. I felt it in my chest, cold terror surging through every nerve. "Run!" I shouted, and we sprinted. Gravel skittered under our sneakers as we fled toward town, adrenaline pushing us forward. We didn't look back, but behind us branches cracked. And then, unbelievable, the thing leapt onto the bridge and began chasing. It clambered and moved with unnatural speed for something that size. I could feel the bridge shake with every step. We pushed harder, adrenaline burning our lungs. We made it inside my house, slammed the door, locked it. My dog, sensing my fear, barked and snarled at the living room window. Moments later came a deafening crash. Living room window shattered. The creature had smashed through glass, its pale form pressed against the opening. My dad ran out, shotgun in hand. He emerged, breathless, weapon trained on the doorway. There was only a shadow. A claw swipe across the doorframe echoed in the hallway. Then silence. A loud bang, a howl of pain. I never saw it again, but I heard something fall onto the front lawn. Days later, police arrived, called in after my dad found a pool of dried blood trailing into the woods. They followed it to a dead end. No creature. No body. They instructed us. Don't speak about this. Stay indoors after dark. They wouldn't call it a cryptid, wouldn't admit what it was. Just said, maybe a wild animal. Years have passed. At night, I still hear pounding on my window around 2:30 a.m. I've lost track of sleep schedules. The riverbank remains forbidden territory in my memory. I've never told many people, too crazy sounding. My friends drifted away, but I've kept watching headlines, reports of missing hikers, blood trails without bodies, unexplained footprints in gravel near bridges. Every time I hear a crack in the dark or wind rustling in treetops, I wonder, is it still there? My name is Jessica, and this happened back in the summer of 2019, on what was supposed to be the perfect family camping trip in the Shawnee National Forest, Illinois. We'd pitched our tent near a small creek, deep in the trees. That evening, after a long day hiking, we cooked dinner, laughed, and fell asleep early in my teen tent. My dad sound asleep beside me. I woke around 10 p.m. needing to use the bathroom. I left our campfire glowing softly and headed toward the porta, John about 50 feet away, thinking nothing of it. When I came back, my dad's tent was dark and empty. Dismissing it at first as deep sleep, I crawled inside, but he wasn't there. Panic set in. I shook him, called his name, but nothing. Then I noticed the sleeping bag zipped up, but the outline inside was flat, still. I stared for what felt like minutes before I realized someone else was in his sleeping bag. I froze. The figure remained motionless. My heart pounded in my ears. I backed out. I couldn't see who it was, just felt skin to skin, human weight, and stillness. I fled to our car and called 911, voice shaking, whispering the location. The deputy arrived 10 minutes later, flashlight cutting through branches. He unzipped the bag. It was empty. My dad was gone. No signs of struggle, no footprints around the tent, no tracks leading off. The deputy shook his head slowly. Without evidence, it was treated as lost person, not kidnapping. I spent the rest of the night curled in the passenger seat, phone light bouncing off trees. My mom called our extended family. At first light, a search party returned, but there was no sign of him. No footprints through gravel or dirt, no broken branches, no footprints near the creek. It was like he vanished into thin air. They reported it to park rangers, local sheriff's department. I scrolled through Reddit nightmares. My own nightmare was now a public unsolved case. I clung to buried hope, but the days dragged. My mother and I moved home. Investigators came and left. No ransom note, no phone activity, just silence. 3 weeks later, a stranger messaged me on Facebook. A man named Alex said he'd rented the campsite a few days after we left. He told a chilling detail. Night 2, around midnight, I woke to see a figure sleeping in a tent at Site 6, same brand as yours. Tall man, dark hair. I peeked, thought maybe someone in the wrong place. I didn't bother him. In the morning, tent was empty. I shrugged. Didn't know it was your dad's. He sent a photo of that empty tent. My stomach dropped. That meant whoever came into our camp had slipped into other sites. He had been inside that tent, even alive, hours after I returned to camp. Why leave him? Why let someone take him? That photo went to police. But again, no suspects, no leads. A month after he disappeared, I went back alone and opened the tent. I found the zipper pulled down halfway, as if someone left in a hurry. I found bits of soil under the zipper, soil that matched no part of our campsite. Not snow, just dirt and leaf litter someone brushed off before leaving. I began having nightmares. I was back that night, and I saw someone crawling into the tent, burying Dad's mouth with a hand over his face so he couldn't scream. I'd wake up sweating, breathless, tears streaming down my face. Each morning, I'd open our tent quietly and remember he wasn't there. I couldn't shake it. I couldn't live with it. In 2020, a local paranormal investigator came forward. She said sometimes residual traces linger after traumatic events. She offered to do nighttime trigger sound tests, EVP recordings, just to try. I was skeptical but desperate. One night, standing at the edge of the clearing at midnight, she pressed record. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the recorder hissed, and I swear I heard my dad's voice whisper, Jess, my breath caught. The investigator looked at me, pale. She played it again. I heard it more clearly. The recording ended. She handed the recorder back to me. Some things might never return, she said quietly. In 2022, when the Park Service cleared the area for maintenance, a shallow hole appeared under our site near a cluster of roots, just slightly off-center from any tent. Inside was a fragment of a watch band, my dad's watch, rusted, no body, no bone, just shattered metal and faint soil imprint. The sheriff's office reopened the case. But these days, with no other physical evidence or suspect, investigation stalled again. It's now summer 2025. I still return each year alone at dusk and light a candle beside that shallow hole. I speak to the empty trees. I tell them I'm still here. I haven't forgotten. To the Redditor who posted originally, the one who called someone sleeping in his dad's tent, your post gave me words when I couldn't speak them. And to the tens of thousands of people who've commented or messaged, I hear your fear, your confusion, and your solidarity. I don't know what happened to my dad, but I know this. Whoever entered that tent under the cloak of night walked free. My father did not. He disappeared like a shadow slipped under his sleeping bag. And every midnight since, my heart still races, waiting, because I survived that night in the woods. My dad wasn't so lucky. It happened in early fall. deep in rural Illinois, during a solo camping trip. I had invited two close friends, let's call them Mike and Emma. We were all mid-20s, eager for a weekend escape from cubicles and city noise. Day one was perfect. Laughter around the campfire, stories about our lives, roasting marshmallows at the edge of the trees. The air was crisp, leaves rustling softly. But that night, everything changed. Around midnight, we heard it. Not an animal's scurry or a gust of wind. It sounded like deliberate footsteps, crunching leaves in slow rhythm just beyond the firelight. I froze mid-swallow. Mike tried to brush it off. "Probably a deer," he said. Emma shook her head. "No, this was intentional." The firelight felt fragile. We crawled into our tents. I lay awake, heart pounding, listening to delicate crackles as though something or someone was circling us just outside. Morning came in muted silence, no birds singing. No insects buzzing, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I mentioned it as we packed, but we all felt it, that oppressive hush. It wasn't natural. That evening around 8 p.m. we left camp for a short hike. The forest felt heavier. Emma stepped into a clearing and froze. I rushed to her side. She pointed deep in the trees at 4 tall, slender scratches running up a tree trunk. Long grooves like claws. We didn't argue. We hurried back, but that night, the footsteps came again, closer, slower, right outside the tent. It was around 2 a.m. when I saw it, a silhouette just beyond the mesh. Too tall, too thin, it stood completely still. Then it moved, a flicker, gone. Emma screamed softly. We woke Mike, no response. We all stared toward the darkness. The silence returned deafening. That morning, Mike discovered paw-like tracks in the soft soil circling our campsite, but they weren't animal tracks. They were too deliberate, spaced too evenly, like someone testing the space between us. By day 3, we couldn't ignore it. The stalker was real. That night, we trapped ourselves in our tent. The fire outside flickered weakly. At around 3:12 a.m. I heard it, a low, guttural hiss like breath drawn through claws. Emma whimpered. Mike whispered, "We need to go." When the forest sucked all sound away again, Emma slipped out with a flashlight. Minutes later, she stumbled back, pale face shaking. "It's at the tree line." Watching. I shined my light. There, a human-shaped figure, unnaturally tall, limbs longer than normal, skin ghost, pale and translucent. Its face leaned to the side as if tilting its head to study us. Its eyes, they were wrong. Empty sockets, black voids. I couldn't scream. Then it grinned. A toothy, jagged smile, too wide for a human mouth. It lunged forward softly, impossibly fast, one moment hidden. The next at our tent, we exploded out, trailing gear and fire in panic. We ran, the trees bent overhead. Branches clawed us. I heard behind me a snapping twig, then a wet, distorted scream echoing through the dark. We ran until our legs burned. We flagged down a passing car on a deserted road. Someone phoned the authorities. They came back that morning with flashlights and evidence kits. But there were no tracks beyond the clearing, no blood stains, no footprints, just the crushed imprint of our stomped tent. We left that night. Weeks later, I managed to capture a blurred image my friend snapped earlier. Just a sky blue smudge above the treetops and 2 sets of cat, large footprints circling where we'd camped. I've never returned. I don't ride that forest path anymore, even now. Sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I hear it again, the crunch of deliberate footsteps too close for comfort. And I wonder, did it let us go? Because I don't think it ended that night. In September 2023, I stumbled across a headline that still tightens my chest when I read it. Reports coming in of 30 declared missing on a camping trip. At first, I dismissed it as sensational clickbait, but a flicker of doubt settled in because I was the only one who came back. We were a group of 30 college students, senior retreat, the final hurrah before graduation. We'd booked a massive remote campsite deep in Wyoming's Wind River Range, pitched across a broad plateau, far from traffic, far from cell reception. That week was supposed to be unforgettable, the kind of memory you carry forever. The first few days were magical. Hikes, laughter echoing off granite cliffs, campfires under a starlit sky so vast it felt spiritual. Around the third night, we built a bonfire so large sparks climbed skyward. Somewhere near that glow, things began to unravel. It was after midnight, maybe 12:30 a.m. I was wandering between tents, inhaling the scent of pine and wood smoke. A friend called me over to the lake. Some wanted to swap ghost stories in moonlight. We grouped beside the water, quiet and reflective. One person looked over the surface and laughed softly. "Look, someone's fishing out there," though none of us brought rods. We peered, but saw nothing. Just lake ripples under moonbeams. No sound, no motion. Suddenly, one of them hummed a note, then another. Soon half the crowd was humming in unison, faint and uncertain, echoing deep in the forest. I laughed, said it was weird, and then felt eyes burning into my back. Turning suddenly, I saw him, a tall figure across the lake's edge, barely visible beneath tree shadows. Not part of our group. Slender, motionless, watching. I blinked and he vanished. I nudged my friend and whispered, "Do you see that?" She looked, but only saw empty trees. I shook it off, telling myself it was a shadow, a trick of moonlight. But later that night, as I curled into my sleeping bag, a feeling of unease thrummed through me. I heard a snap outside, footsteps pacing near tents. Laughter followed, distant and echoing, though no party or flashlights moved. By sunrise, only 12 of us were around camp. 18 beds empty, tents unzipped, backpacks laid open, chairs upright. No trash, no blood, no signs of struggle. Just blank canvas and wilderness. We called out names. We searched trails. We scoured rocks. Nothing, no footprints beyond camp. No disturbances in underbrush. Our group had simply vanished from the plateau. Only a squad of hikers answered a faint whistle from our fire pit hours later, me, hunched and shivering. I couldn't say the word Aidin, it felt too heavy. Next, authority arrived, forest rangers with bloodhounds, county sheriffs, news crews asking questions. I gave statements. But the search turned minimal. No clues, no ransom, no evidence of violent intent. I wasn't detained, just tested. Within days, locals said the area was cursed. The tribal elders spoke of ancient warnings. This place on the edge of sacred mountains carried old power. The disappearances echoed stories from mythology, people cut off, taken by darkness. By the end of week 2, the search was suspended. I was encouraged to return home. Yet the news anchor said 30 were declared missing. The count was official. The reporting repeated that 30 vanished without a trace. Weeks later, I returned to the now deserted campground. My shaking hands carried a small flashlight, a notebook, my voice recorder. The more I stood there, the clearer I could feel something watching, but nothing visible. I walked to each empty tent. Inside one, I found a bracelet I'd given a friend earlier, laying spread like she dropped it intentionally. In another, a half-consumed sandwich. In each tent, I found last little signs of life colliding with absence. At the fire pit, I replayed a memory. Someone singing that lullaby, voices echoing across water. The hum had felt spun from multiple people, phased in a layered harmony. I pressed play on a shaky video recorded the night before. They were singing the same note over and over softly. "Come, come closer." I flipped off the recorder. It was enough. I didn't sleep that night, pitched in an abandoned ranger station nearby. I heard whispering on the wind, a chorus of voices repeating closer. I left early at dawn. As I drove away past the tree line, I glanced backward and saw only walls of green. Not a soul. Nothing left behind but gravel roads and still silence. Months later, freelance reporters published what footage they had. A blurry pale figure glimpsed in at least 2 campsite streams. Another friend reported fleeting shapes in her tent's mirrored surface before they disappeared. Nothing concrete, but enough to fuel speculation. My own nightmares replay, pairs of glowing eyes just at the forest edge, whispers calling from the woods. Marching footsteps through pit arrangements after midnight. I see faces in shadows, friends I'll never hug again. Therapy helped, so did time. But sometimes, late at night, I still pull the bracelet from my pocket. I hear the echo-hummed note again. I whisper to myself, 30 gone and only me. The words taste hollow, because I know I'm part of the story. The only one who returned. And the only one who hears, "I think I'm still followed," by whispers and footsteps nobody else can track. If you ever camp in the wilderness and hear a chorus of soft humming across water, turn back. Stay close. Don't wander near tree lines when no one else is awake, because 30 young people disappeared that night, and I can't tell you why. But I can warn you, some places hold secrets older than cell reception. Some songs call you deeper into darkness, and some campsites carry memory of what can never be brought back.